Yo, 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 what is going on? It is the Crazy Rider right here, right now, back with chapter 30 of my Invaders and fanfiction. Yep, you heard me right. 30. We're at 30. And we still ain't done. But for the 30th chapter, there may or may not be a little, violence. Maybe even a bit of gore. So, if perhaps you're a little younger person, or you think you may not be able to stomach such content, then maybe don't proceed. But if you think you can get through some nastiness, then by all means, do, if you can, sit back, relax, and enjoy it all. Right here, right now. Chapter 30. Heartache. What we do now? I asked Zim. No worries, wolf child, Zim said with confidence. I've placed a tracking device on the dib stink so that we can follow him. Okay, I responded. For what? Isn't it obvious? Zim asked. We'll wait for him to do the hard part of finding his way into Tak's giant weenie stand and infiltrate based on his location. That could take hours, I argued. Do not question Zim, Zim screamed. Sometime later, the tracking device showed Dib was inside the weenie stand, and he had gotten in through some secret entrance. We took the Voot cruiser and found our way to the secret entrance Dib was behind. We blasted a hole in the wall and stood to see Dib, Gaz, and Tak. It's over, Tak! Zim shouted, and we jumped out of the hole and onto the floor. The earth is mine to devastate, and I already promised the moon to Gur. Zim! Liz! Dib shouted in surprise. How did you know we'd be here? Zim turned to Dib while I kept an angry eye on Tak. I placed a tracking device on you. Tracking device? Dib repeated. Where? I heard Dib searching himself and then Gur say, Your head smells like a puppy. I see you've recovered rather quickly, mutt, Tak said to me. Dib and his sister may be a bit smart for this, but there's no way you're smart enough to resist. I saw a light flicker in Tak's eyes and almost forgot why I was here. Then the memories of seeing her torturing my Zim flashed across my mind and I was back. I growled. What? How? Tak shouted. You're stupid! You couldn't possibly be smart enough to not be hypnotized. Good thing about being wolf, I told Tak. Eyes, not dominant sense. Tak hissed. Stupid mutt! But this won't stop me from keeping my promise to the tallest. Mimi, attack! Down a chute the cat slithered. No, I said, not you again. Mimi transformed into a robot and held Dib up by his face before throwing him off the platform and down a vent shaft. Mimi then eyed me and Zim, and I wasn't sticking around to be tasered by this robot a second time. I ran for the hole in the wall and leaped onto the cruiser. Mimi chased Zim, who soon joined me. Mimi then threw Gur at us, and the cruiser crashed on the ground. We crashed next to the dumpster where Dib was at, and he started snapping at Zim. Ugh! He exclaimed. You ruined everything, Zim. I was about to find out what her plan was. Me? You're the one who refused to... Hey! Gaz interrupted Zim. What's this thing? That's a Sir Unit's memory disk, Zim said, looking at the device. It probably is Tak's plan all over it. Perfect, I barked. We find out her plan. Zim started reaching for the disc, but Dib jumped between him and Gaz. No way, it's ours. Dib shoved Zim. Back off. Dib, I barked. You idiot, quit being pup and hand over disc. I'm the only one with the technology to decode the files, Zim said to Dib. And we're the ones with the files to be decoded, Dib countered. And I'm... Gur tried to join in but just laughed. I don't know. Boys, I barked as loud as I could. We all work together. We take disc to base and find out plan. Let us see the base, Zim, Dib said to Zim. As soon as we destroy tech, I'm gonna feed your brains to my robot, Zim said to Dib, and they went head to head. Deal, Dib said, and I rolled my eyes at their petty fighting. Minutes later, the 5 of us were going down one of the elevators to the base. Huh, Gaz said, unimpressed. This is your base? Don't touch anything, Zim warned the membranes, or I'll melt your face off or something. We walked across the pathway and stood before the large screen. Zim inserted the disc in one of the slots. Within seconds, Tak's green face appeared. My leaders, she was saying, I offer a gift to prove my worthiness as an invader. I have created a magma pump to hollow out the Earth's molten core. The screen showed a digital diagram of the Earth being hollowed out. I could do that, Zim said out loud. Once empty, Tak continued, I'll fill the planet with snacks as an offering to my tallest. Your leaders are just taller than everyone else? Dib questioned Zim. No judge, Dib, I told him. Alpha wolves must be big and strong to lead pack. Tak continued, with the maple impossible to find, Earth has no value to you, but I shall make it valuable again. She stole this plan from me, Zim said. She did not, I said as Gur said, no, she didn't. Be quiet, Zim shouted, and then the Earth started shaking. Computer. What? The computer said as if it was a burden to disturb it. Ready the voot. I must stop Tak, Zim commanded. Her little joke has gone far enough. I come with you, I started tailing Zim. Tak and I have unfinished business. Wait, Dib also called. You have to drop me off at the weenie stand. Someone has to shut the pump off. The 3 of us squeezed into the small cruiser and flew off. We flew towards the weenie stand where we saw magma being pumped out of it. The hatch in the cruiser was opened, and Dib was dropped off below. There, Zim pointed to the edge of the pump where Tak was laughing maniacally at her work. Let me at her, let me at her, I growled and barked out the window of the cruiser. We flew towards her, and she turned and noticed us. She jumped in her own ship, and we chased her up the magma spout into the outer atmosphere of Earth. I looked down at the globe to see it deteriorating. I hoped that the wolves were all right. As Zim flew through the magma field chasing Tak, I began putting on the Irken space travel suit. Zim had introduced me to the gear during our time on Mars, so I was relatively familiar with the equipment. Zim hadn't noticed I was putting the suit on until I stood beside him. I looked out the cruiser and saw that Tak's ship was beginning to go crazy, and I swear I heard Gur's voice coming from it. Zim, I called out without taking my eyes off Tak's ship. Open cruiser. I don't take orders from, I grabbed Zim by the shirt and growled. I said, open the damn cruiser. Very well, Zim said and opened the cruiser just long enough for me to exit. I used the jets on the boots of the Irken suit to fly towards Tak's ship until I landed on the windshield. Indeed, her robot had blue eyes and was behaving like Gur. Mutt, she shouted upon seeing me. Get off my ship! In that moment, I thought about everything this monster did to me, Zim, and Gretchen. I thought of how she read that poem to Zim in front of the class and threw barbecue ribs on him. I thought of Gretchen crying when she saw Tak and Dib talking. I thought of how Zim kept calling Tak his love pig. If anyone should be his love pig, it should be me. I brought my mind and my body back to the day I watched my father die at the hoofs of a moose. I went back to seeing my mother die because of me and that horrible river. I remembered how I was when those men captured me and took me from my home and my pack. I went back to that time in my life when I was savage. Despite my right paw still being a bit sore from trying to hit Mimi, I raised both my front paws above my head and gathered all the strength I had in them. I brought my paws down on the glass, and a crack slithered about the windshield. No! Tack cried apart, but the robot kept her busy enough not to repair the glass. I drew my paws away and gathered my strength for the second time. This time the glass broke a hole big enough to stick my paw through. I peeled the rest of the glass away until I could squeeze into the ship. You fool! Tack cried again. You foolish mutt! I squeezed through the hole and landed on the ship's dash. I sat there on all fours and snarled at the enemy Urkin. I think Tack had put on the invisible air helmet before I completely broke the glass, and that's why the vacuum of space hadn't killed her yet. Fate had left her to me. You stay away from me, you filthy mutt! Tack shouted at me. What do you want? I could only growl 2 words. Zim, mine. Before I completely engulfed myself in my savage instinct. I leaped on top of the Urkin, shoving her robot aside. I landed with my claws digging into her shoulders. I heard Tack's high scream as I ripped the flesh from her chest with my powerful teeth. Layer after layer of green flesh, followed by her light pink meat and blood. Every piece of meat that I tore from the Urkin's chest I threw to the side. Tack was still alive, as I ripped the equivalent to a single rib from her insides. She screamed louder as I shoved my face into the hole in her chest and wrapped my teeth around the beating equivalent to the Urkin heart. I held the organ in my mouth and yanked it from the strings it was attached to. Tack looked up at me and the contents of my mouth with shock and horror as she breathed her final breaths. Her breath stopped, with purple eyes still wide, watching her killer. Clear pink blood dripped from my lips, and I continued to hold the heart in my mouth as it pumped for the last time. I gazed down at my work, proud of what I had just done. I had finally gotten my revenge on my greatest enemy. I had finally killed an enemy on my own. The girl who stole Zim's attention from me, but abused him. The girl who made Zim think that love was abusive instead of what it truly is. This planet belongs to Zim and I to conquer, not her. I brought myself out of my savage mode just enough to set the coordinates of the ship to the center of the sun. I then squeezed out of the hole in the windshield and flew back to Zim's cruiser. He let me in, but he had a look of amazement on his face. I dropped the heart of our enemy at Zim's feet, signifying that he was the Alpha, as Tack's ship flew towards the sun. I smiled up at Zim without regrets, and he stared down at me with disbelief. We were then interrupted because the magma started sucking itself back into the earth. Did it, I said joyously, and then corrected myself. We all did it. Wow. Brutal. Before you say anything, no, I don't hate Tack. I quite like Tack. It's just how the story has to go right now. All right? Good. So if you aren't too freaked out or mad or scared of me now. Then I will see you brave little darlings next time, and remember, keep your crazy.